Hot stove news. Bobby Hurley is here to stay for at least the next 2 seasons.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back in. Today we are talking about Bobby Hurley. Today was supposed to be talking about the Sun Devil spring ball and who has the most to gain on the defensive side of the football. But, breaking news will always take priority. And I would say this is pretty big. We have been kind of speculating on this. There was actually an episode that came out last week whether or not Hurley was going to be fired. And lo and behold, it's the exact opposite. Hurley is here to stay for at least the next 2 years, first reported by the Arizona Republic. I have some thoughts. I have some positives. I have some negatives. And I've got what it means for this upcoming season. So let's go ahead and dive into it. We're going to start with my instant reaction. And this is going to be off script. This is going to be a little different from the rest of the show, which is going to be more structured. This is just my instant reaction, unfiltered, whatever. Here's the first thing I thought. When I saw the news that Bobby Hurley had been extended, the first thing that crossed my mind was, that makes sense. And the reason why it makes sense, and there's a whole litany of reasons, but the biggest factor here is Arizona State is a middle of the pack program. I think that's fair to say. More often than not, you are a competitive basketball program. It's nothing too crazy. You have 3 losing seasons in the last 4 years, but prior to that, you had 3 consecutive 20-win seasons. And when this team is dialed in, they're a decent program that is able to contend for the NCAA tournament. The problem is in the last 4 years, you've been nowhere close 3 times, and you've had 3 losing seasons, and it's been very infuriating seasons at that. That is definitely the recency bias. The one plus here is at least you've seen some success. I don't know. Like, to me, it's like it makes sense why they brought him back. Is it super exciting? I don't think so, but I know that there's going to be a host of people that are excited, and there's going to be a host of people that are very upset. And I think that both are very valid. To me, I think it's fine, I guess. The one thing that I've said before many times is, who are you going to get that's better? Because this is not a program that is super well-renowned. And like I said, they're middle of the pack, and there's some really decent years, there's some good years, and then there's bad years. And the Sun Devils have had more bad years than good years in the tenure under Bobby Hurley. You've had 5 losing seasons compared to 4 winning seasons, but when you have a winning season, there are at least 20 wins. And they've been to the tournament 3 of the 4 times that they got 20 wins. The only time they didn't go was because it was canceled for COVID. So you can get to the tournament with Bobby Hurley, but ever since COVID, they've been on the downside of things. You wonder if he can get back to the positive side. And I think you can. I think it's possible, but I certainly don't look at it as like definitive. But back to my point is, who are you going to get that's better? Because I don't know how many college coaches are looking to make the move to come to Arizona State. In theory, you should be all about coming to one of the biggest universities in the country that is able to recruit very well. Bobby Hurley has done a good job recruiting. They have the ability to bring guys in, but we haven't seen it consistently. And even when they bring talented kids in, it's not necessarily giving you prolonged success. You had 3 straight 20-win seasons, and now you've had 3 losing seasons in the last 4 years. And it feels like you are closer to the losing seasons under Hurley than you are the winning seasons under Hurley. And I just don't know if that is going to get back on the right track under Hurley. Who would be interested to come to this program then? Because unless you truly look at this as a golden opportunity to coach at one of the biggest universities and a place that should be able to recruit, and it's a massive jump from, what's the term? Not Power 5, Power 6, but like an example, would the GCU head coach be willing to bounce from GCU to Arizona State? I don't know. I don't know how realistic that is, because GCU is a good program and their head coach has a very good thing going on there. You're not Arizona where you can pluck the head coach from Gonzaga. You just are not at that point, and I don't know if you ever will be at that point where the top options on the market see a Arizona come up for an opening and they go, yeah, I'm going to make that jump. For Arizona State, you wish that you could. As of right now, you can, and maybe that changes with you moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, which we'll touch on a little more in detail later on in the podcast. I want to like it, and I don't hate it. I'm very much in the middle. I'm lukewarm on it. I very much understand the reason you stay with him, and another huge reason that you stay with him is because you still don't have a new athletic director, and you still are trying to figure out the NCAA stuff that's going on with the football program. And right, wrong, or indifferent, it would be very difficult to make that change. And it makes it even more difficult to pull someone in. Who's going to want to come to coach at a program that has so much uncertainty behind it right now? And that's something that ASU has done to itself. Quite frankly, you should have made your athletic director hire months ago. From the time Ray Anderson retired, you should have been all about trying to get to that next step, and you should have had somebody in place within a month. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. But they haven't done that. And we are more than halfway through March, and we have no prospects. We have no idea what's going to be next. And that is incredibly disappointing, because now it's going to bleed out to the other programs. So with this in mind, it makes a lot of sense. And keep in mind, this is also the extension that was put on the table last year for him. It was a 3-year extension. He did not sign it. So now this is a 2-year extension that'll run through the 2024-25 season and up to the 2025-26 season. After that, it'll be up to them if they want to bring him back or if they want to move on. So, like, it makes sense that he ends up signing this contract extension because it's already on the table. ASU clearly likes him, whether we like him or not. And with the uncertainty that you have with your athletic director and the future of your athletics period, it would just be incredibly difficult to get someone in. So it makes sense on all accounts for me. I'm not surprised that this is where your basketball program is ending up. I feel like if you were going to fire him, you would have known, I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago. And it would have been like, hey, Hurley's going to coach through the remainder of this season, and then we're moving on, like you saw with the Stanford head coach and several other coaches had that situation where it was like, yeah, they're going to coach through the remainder of this, and then we're moving on from them. Felt like that would have been the same situation for Arizona State, but obviously that did not come to be. So it felt very much like he was coming back, and now he is coming back. I think it's right about what we thought. Not surprising, not overly exciting, but it makes sense. We're going to talk about more in just a minute. What it means for this upcoming season, in particular for 2024-25. What does it mean? We'll talk about it in just one moment. It's the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Auburn Tigers can only be described as a pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC. As they knocked off the Florida Gators in the SEC championship, they're set to make a run in the NCAA tournament. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Also want to talk to you about our friends over at Amazon Fire. The Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides you with millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep you up to date on the latest in the sports world, whether that be March Madness, the NBA, or Major League Baseball, and much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this one. To learn more, go to www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. The Locked On College Basketball breakdown for your bracket is officially out. My best friends and my experts, Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know about filling out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA tournament. Find Locked On Bracket Breakdown now on Locked On College Basketball Podcast, wherever you're getting your podcasts. Guys, they helped me set up mine. I listened to the entire show. They gave some really good explanations for how they built their brackets. I came to the conclusion that I am, in fact, sticking with UConn as my championship. And for what it's worth, I believe Andy has U of A out in a round of 32. And come on, how could you not like U of A out that early in the tournament? I'm all about it. Here's hoping that they lose to Long Beach. Is it Long Beach State? I can't remember, but here's hoping they lose to a 15 seed for the second straight season. Let's get back into our conversation, though, and talk about Bobby Hurley and what it means for this upcoming season. And there is one major factor that plays into this for me, and that is the recruiting aspect. Right now, the Sun Devils have 5 hard recruits. You should be seeing them sign here pretty shortly, but you've got Amir Ali and Jamiya, who are both 4-star guys, and they're top 20 prospects in the state of Arizona, or excuse me, they're top 20 prospects at their position, and they're top 6 prospects in the state of Arizona. This should hopefully keep these guys, as well as Jeremiah Nurako, Bo Aldrich, and Jaden Smith, the other guys who are committed. That should hopefully keep them wanting to come to Arizona State, is because you are bringing back the guy who recruited them. You've seen plenty of times, and not just at Arizona State, it's just part of college athletics, is when a coach is fired that recruited them, they're gonna decommit. It just is what it is. It would be no different than if you were hired by an organization that employed someone that you really trusted, and then they fired that guy right before you took that job. You would consider whether or not you still wanted to go to that job, because the person that you trusted is no longer there. That's the same situation for these kids. So bringing back Bobby Hurley with a top 20 recruiting class in the nation right now, number 16, that's huge, especially because this is a team that has been so reliant. That's the word. So reliant on the transfer portal the last few years. At some point, you need to start bringing in young guys. And you've got Braylon Green and you got Akil Watson that were in this year's freshman class. They'll be back. Now you're bringing in 2 4-star kids. You're bringing in 5 kids in general with a lot of size. Nurako is 6'9", 220. Amir Ali is 6'8", 175. Jamiya is 6'8", 230. And the center, Jaden Smith, is 6'11", 205. You have needed size for a minute. For what it's worth, Bo Aldridge is 6'4", 190. You need size. They really struggled rebounding this year, and they could not play off the glass enough. And there was not nearly enough points that were just inside the paint and right off the rim. Like, you desperately need to get bigger. And this is a big class. When your smallest kid is 6'4", that's great news for you. All the other guys are 6'8" or taller. That's what you need. So keeping this recruiting class together was pivotal for the Sun Devils. And there's other guys on the roster, too, that you're looking to build around. Obviously, you got Akil, you got Braylon. Hopefully, this means that some guys can stay, which kind of brings me to my next point here is you're hoping that Frankie Collins isn't going anywhere. Because right now, there's going to be a huge market and opportunity for him to leave for his final season of eligibility and take a look at a potential NIL deal. And no one would blame him. I thought it was hilarious, by the way. Somebody actually accused Frankie of leaving Michigan for NIL and was like, oh, yeah, he went to get his bag. And Frankie was like, I promise you that money was not a factor. And that couldn't be more true, because the Arizona State University is not known for their NIL packages. So if there's one thing that I trust about any player that comes to Arizona State, basketball, football, or otherwise, it's that they're not coming here for NIL. It's not even in their top 5 reasons to come here, because it's not available as of now. They're building on it, as Kenny Dillingham has said before. They're making big strides, but there's a lot of work to do, and that's exactly where you're at. So, yeah, what you're hoping here is that with Hurley returning, that will convince these guys to come back for one more year, whether that's Frankie Collins or Adam Miller and Sean Phillips Jr. and Jamiya Neal, guys who were very important to the program. And all 4 of them are probably starters going into next year if they all return. plug in some of the young guys, maybe get a transfer or two. It's going to be very important that Arizona State keeps some kind of continuity. And I know what you're thinking is, well, this core just went, what they end up, 14 and 18? 14 and 18. Totally understand. But you're adding more talent. You're retaining some chemistry, because an important thing to remember here is this is a brand new lineup. You brought back Frankie Collins and you lost 4 starters, and you lost depth pieces too. This was always going to be a difficult season. So finding a way to keep that continuity from the top with Bobby Hurley to the core players here is huge, because you get another year of Neal and Collins and Miller and Phillips working together in your starting lineup. It's going to be better. You also hopefully will have health on your side and all that good stuff, but that's out of our control. You're banking on the continuity returning and Hurley staying to keep the guys, whether that's the young kids, the freshmen, whether that's the incoming recruits, whether that's your veterans. Hopefully with Hurley staying, these guys want to come back and they want to, no pun intended, rebound from a bad season. That's what you want to see. So that's huge. That's absolutely huge for the Sun Devils, was to bring these kids back and show them that, hey, we are interested and we are intent on retaining the core piece here with Bobby Hurley. And with him coming back into the folds, it again, to feed a fed horse, it's continuity. And the biggest part of this continuity is you're moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. Starting over would be remarkably difficult for you. It would severely put you in a bad situation where you would be looking at, I don't know, honestly, with how good the Big 12 is, I think if you started over, I don't know if you're a 10-win team, because you would lose your head coach, you would lose a lot of players to the transfer portal, you would lose your recruiting class. You would be rolling out probably a bunch of transfers, and there's not going to be a ton of guys that are interested in coming to Arizona State at that point. That's tough. So with you moving to a new conference, it is important to have somebody that you can rely upon. Right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you agree or not, that was always going to be a huge factor. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. But of course, there's positives and negatives to talk about here with Hurley returning. We're going to touch on them in just a moment. It's the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you pick every game in the tournament. Whether you're betting on an upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, or anything else you can think of, and you can pick who's even going to win the whole thing. Just join at FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. One more time, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And of course, I appreciate you guys for making us your first listen of the day. Like I mentioned before, check on the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown and build your perfect bracket. I don't know if Warren Buffett is still offering $1 billion for a perfect bracket, but it starts with knowing what you're talking about. And Isaac Shade and Andy Patton know what they're talking about. Let's wrap up our conversation with positives and negatives for Bobby Hurley returning. And we'll start with the positives. The biggest positive is something that we've touched on, and that's remaining consistent at the top. Holding on to Bobby Hurley is pivotal for retaining the players you have. And again, I totally understand if you want to say that, well, these players weren't good, so why would we want to hold on to them? And to which I would say, it's not that it's not the case at all. These players are good. There's a lot of talent and potential with these guys: Adam Miller, Jamiya Neal, Frankie Collins, Sean Phillips, the 4 core guys that are going to be starting for you. Returning them with another year of chemistry is huge. Quite frankly, let's think about it like this. You bring back the core 4, shout out the Scream. You bring in this recruiting class, you hold on to depth pieces such as Akeel Watson and Braylon Green and Kamari Lands. You hold on to those guys, you bring in the strong recruiting class, you have the young talent, and you add a transfer or 2 or 3. This is instantly a team that goes from 14-8, and I would tell you they're closer to a 21 team again. And we've seen Hurley is capable of that, people. Because when it's not a losing season, they're a 20-win team every time. 4 winning seasons, minimum 20 wins. They know what they're doing. Bobby Hurley knows what he's doing. He can build a winning team. This was just a very difficult season to do so. And we saw the ramifications of that. But we also saw some good. We saw that Hurley got these guys off to a hot start. They started off the year 4-0 in conference play. So we know that Hurley is capable of coaching these guys up. We are very aware of the talent that's on this roster. I promise you it's only going to get better. I totally understand where you're coming from. But I promise that this year is closer to an outlier than it is to what's going to be happening if they retain these guys. They're going to get better. I promise you. You've got the previous success here as well. And that kind of leads to my next point is, like I just said, 2023-24 feels closer to an outlier. I understand it's more losing seasons than it is winning seasons. But this was always going to be difficult. Something I said leading up to the season was, can you capture lightning in a bottle twice? Odds were always against you, and lo and behold, that's what happened. But if you retain this roster and you're not starting from ground zero and you're not blowing the whole thing up, you're going to get back to that 20 wins, 20-win opportunity. You should be able to get back to the tournament, and hopefully you can win a game, because Hurley is still looking for a win in the round of 64, I should say. He has made it to the round of 64 twice. He's never advanced past that. Hopefully you can get to that point. But a huge part of that is keeping your core, keeping the recruiting class, keeping your depth, keeping the consistency at the top with Bobby Hurley. For what it's worth, he's a fan favorite for some. I know some people don't care for him. I like Bobby Hurley. I love the passion he brings. Clearly, the players resonate with it and they respond to it. But of course, there's negatives. Of course, not everything is sunshines and rainbows. Of course, the biggest question you have here is, what's the upside to bringing him back? Because we probably know that the best case scenario was 20 wins, going to the tournament and having an early exit, because that's what we've seen. Even with 3 consecutive 20-win seasons where you would have gone to the tournament each time, we kind of know what it is. We know that this is not a program that's going to make a run to the Sweet 16. They're certainly not a national title team. So are you willing to continue to settle on the lower upside? And can you get back to the tournament is my next question. Me personally, yeah, I think you can. But it's going to be reliant on these guys returning, because if they leave, if you lose Frankie, if you lose Jamiya, if you lose your depth, if you lose this recruiting class, oh my God, you're going to have another losing season. Like I said, I don't know if you're 10 wins if you lose all those guys. We just saw how difficult it was to build up a winning program with all the transfers that are coming in. You want to try and do that again? That's hard. And I don't know if that's what's the word? Repeatable, I suppose. You are closer to this season than you are the 2022-23 team. And probably worse if you got to rebuild everything. Because at least with this team, you brought back Neal and you brought back Frankie. If you lose all of them, that's tough. And you're going to lose the recruits too. That's not ideal, to put it politely. Final question I have. Is a rebuild the better option? Because yes, you do set yourself back very far behind if you move on from Hurley. You lose a ton of guys. You lose credibility that even now I don't know how much that stands out for certain people when it comes to the credibility of this program. But you are potentially blowing it all up, starting over. But sometimes that's a good thing. Look at the football program with Kenny Dillingham. I mean, they started out with scratch. Kenny Dillingham built that program back up. They won 3 games. They easily could have won 6. That and the future's bright. The future is bright for the program, for the football program. We are expecting them to get back on track sooner rather than later. But it took some really difficult seasons to get to that point. Would that be the best thing for basketball? Would it have been in the best interest of Arizona State to go through a horrible season and probably another bad season and bank on everything getting better? That's your question. That's what you're hoping. So would it have been a better option to blow it all up, to start over, to start from scratch? Because sometimes a rebuild is necessary. And we'll be wondering that. Because if this doesn't work out, what you'll be asking is maybe we should have done this sooner rather than later. Would it have been better to do it in 24-25 instead of 26-27? And that's tough. Those are my overall thoughts. I gave you an instant raw reaction. We talked about what it means for this upcoming season. And we talked why it's a good thing he's back and why it's not a great thing that he's back. I want to know what you guys think. I know there's going to be plenty of you that are upset. If you do support Hurley coming back, I want to know your logic. I want to know why you're all about Hurley coming back to this program. So leave a comment. Hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. And of course, wherever you're getting your shows, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. We've still got plenty to talk about from basketball to football. Spring ball is right around the corner for the football program. I'll be keeping you up to date on that. So now has never been a better time to subscribe to the channel. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. And thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Guys, it's so much fun to talk sports with you. And of course, we're going to be getting back on track tomorrow so that we can talk more about the football program. Like promised, we are going to take a look at the defensive side of the football and who has the most to win for the Sun Devils. So I'll see you then. And until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.